Welcome back to the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast, getting gritty with it with your host, Yuri Wallach, and my co-host and partner in crime, Jamie Baskow. Jamie, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, doing pretty good. Getting a lot of rest. Everything else is going on, and doing pretty well, man. I see the Flyers are kicking some butt. You got Coots on the ice, you got Farabee on the ice. You had Jaegers Mulas on the ice. You know, it has a sense of, hockey is back, right? So everybody should be pumped, right?
I love that. Love that attitude. A little taste of what's to come in the show. And let's introduce our newest guest, Joe Borek. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Joe is one of our writers, but he also has his own podcast. He has his own representation on the internet. He just graces us with some of his content. You guys have been enjoying it of late. Joe, please introduce yourself. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Yeah, my name's Joe Borek. I recently graduated from Chestnut Hill College in business comm, so obviously I've been excited about that. We didn't have a normal graduation. We're hoping to still have one by the end of the summer, so that's some positive news. And then I've been a huge 4for4 sports person my whole life, pretty much, and obviously something we'll talk about later. The big thing with me that really got me into every sport was when we had our biggest runs in the playoffs. And obviously we're going to talk about one of our biggest runs in the playoffs later in this podcast, but that's something I've loved. And my Twitter handle's at JJBorek26. And then we're also True Philadelphian Sportscast with my good buddy Andrew, which is True_Philly Sport. And with Jamie's good friend Shane, I do one with Chasing the Pennant, which I think that's at any podcast, ANYP Philly still, because we couldn't come up with a unique name yet for the Twitter handle.
Podcasts.
Yeah.
You feel like you do a podcast every night. Here, I held this guy up. I held this guy up here, man.
What happens?
Two keys next to each other. That was just pissing us off. So we had to figure out a way to, and we still haven't figured out a way around that yet. So.
It's all good. That stuff happens. So let's talk hockey, though, guys. Let's get excited. Let's get excited about the season. Just like Jamie was saying, a lot of cool stuff's happening, actually. And it's kind of happening in the background because life is kind of insane right now. But behind that, we have this kind of beautiful moment of Sean Couturier coming back on the ice, like Jamie was saying. You know, we feel hockey is in the air. We feel the players are coming back on the ice. And even with the weird rules, there is kind of this slow progression into the inevitable time back into the season. I think back into the playoffs is something we're all excited about. And speaking of the playoffs, the host cities have still kind of not been officially named. There's some speculation. We know that Vegas is a front runner. I've heard Toronto thrown around. Obviously, there's been other choices, and Toronto's been thrown around, I think, for many reasons. But obviously, there's issues with the border and whatnot. Anyway, full speculation. What do you guys think? Joe, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about the host cities? What do you think about Vegas and, potential of other cities?
I think Vegas will probably be the primary one from everything I've been reading for the players since they've opened some of the strips. So there's some limited access to casinos and different things. As Edmonton said, they would also offer entertainment. So for me, those were kind of my two cities going in. And Vegas is, of course, a newer arena just being built with the expansion team. And then Rogers Place was only built in 2016, I believe. So both of them are newer arenas with newer facilities that are able to house all these teams and have multiple locker rooms, as well as hotels right by the arenas and entertainment right around. And I just think with the good idea Edmonton laid out, combined with all Vegas has to offer, those would be the two cities I would go with, and I think players would be the most interested with. So.
Totally. And we heard a little bit about the NBA possibly in Disney World. So this is kind of the adult Disney World, right?
Yeah,
Interesting
exactly.
concept. Yeah. Jamie, what do you think, buddy?
As far Vegas is definitely the front runner. I'm pretty sure that's pretty much set in stone. Vegas does worry me a little bit. I ain't gonna lie to you, just because of what Joe just mentioned. And yes, it does offer a lot in terms of entertainment and potential in terms of casinos and just keeping the players busy, keeping their minds occupied, keeping hopefully their families, occupied and whatnot. There's a lot to do there in terms of, restaurants and, and movies and just little gadgets if people have kids. We don't know all the ins and outs of, the bubble life that they're going to be living. But it worries me in a sense to where if they do go to casinos, with this COVID still lingering around and whatnot, say if a player gets it, then X, Y, and Z, and you already know what happened. So I think Vegas worries me, although it definitely, I understand why the NHL loves it, and I understand why the players like it. And, because honestly, I don't know all the ins and outs to what the bubble life in Vegas would be. I would surmise that they would shut off the casinos. You can't go here, you can't go, can't go there. But I believe that Toronto is also a front runner, in my opinion, as well, just because one East, one West, and Toronto it is high for COVID right now, but the numbers could come down by the time they decide in the next few weeks for the hub cities. So if the numbers come down for COVID, I think that Toronto is a shoo-in. I think when I was on the Zoom call a few weeks ago with Gary Bettman and Bill Daly, I got the impression that they definitely wanted a Canadian city, if that was possible, at least one Canadian city, one U.S. city. So I think that they were gung-ho about that. So what I was going to say is if the numbers are still high for Toronto, if the numbers are still high for Montreal for COVID, how about Ottawa? I don't know all the ins and outs. Like Joe mentioned, Edmonton put forth a heck of a proposal in terms of having outdoor movies. It's cooler there, so you're more comfortable to sit outside and hang out, just enjoy the outdoors, maybe, just hang out with your friends and family, play cornhole or something to that nature. Edmonton offered a lot. I don't know how much Ottawa would offer. And again, I'm a little concerned about Vegas because Vegas is what Vegas is. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? That's just it's a fear. But I guess I always overanalyze stuff, in some retrospect. So
well, we don't have Richie and Carter to worry about anymore in Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have that. Yeah.
That's a good point.
I think you bring up really valid points, and I think it's probably why we haven't heard an answer. I'll be honest with you guys, because there really is no perfect city. You're going to find something wrong with all of these places, and I think that's kind of the problem. They're just going to go with probably where they can make the most money, is my assumption. And that's why I say Toronto, just because the marketplace, the exchange rate as well, and I think that's partially a benefit of a Canadian city is that, it's 70 cents to the dollar, essentially. You also have Vancouver, which while Vancouver, the time zone probably is not great, also a big, beautiful city. But maybe it doesn't have to be a big city. Maybe it can be a smaller city as well, like Quebec City. But it would be funny, and the reason I smiled when you said Ottawa, because I'm like, oh, Eugene Melnick, working with the NHL. I'm like, that should be entertaining for everybody. See, the little skimping that happens along the way. It's like, oh yeah, there's no seats in the stands or something. There'd be some kind of weird scenario with him. So that'd just be entertaining.
Hey, you know what? We should all be happy that we're here to talk about hockey, right? I mean that's something that they're possibly reconvening, and I say possibly because I always say that until it's definitely set in stone. Just because we don't know what the ins and outs, the bubble life and all some of the other hurdles, but it's just good that I'm just happy that both sides are getting along to even discuss hub cities and to even put forth a plan. Because you're looking at the MLB and that just looks like a thing under fire there, and I think they're ruining their sport. Whereas the NHL looks more cohesive, and we talked about that before the show, your Reef, didn't we? Talked about being cohesive as a and you know what I'm
talking about. To be honest, we've been through this before. I mean, so is the MLB, but we've been through a few lockouts, and I don't know. I feel like hockey's culture probably is maybe a little more tight-knit. It's a smaller sport. It's not as popular. They don't play as many games, right, as well. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I mean, that's the one thing I think we've always loved about hockey players is that they want to play. They always want to play. They play through injuries. They play through head injuries, which they're not supposed to. And I don't want to just say these are just hockey players, because I guarantee you can find people like this in every sport. But it is kind of like personified in a hockey player, is that, you know, you're not supposed to even complain about your pain. That's like a new age thing. Like, if you guys remember, at the end of Bobby Clark, Eric Lindros, I'm pretty sure Bobby Clark called Eric Lindros a baby. And that doesn't really happen anymore. You know what I mean? And
As
like,
teammates, definitely not.
Over... yeah, right. But
I was curious.
You know,
I just had a question. I was curious with you guys. I was of belief that it would be good to give the hub city to a team that's in the 24 set, because then you're giving that market at least some reprieve from losing the money they lost during the regular season, rather than giving it to a market that didn't even earn a playoff like money anyway, like Ottawa, Los Angeles, that were like through Ottawa in there, or Los Angeles, that was an option. That's why I never thought Los Angeles was a good option, even though there's stuff to do. It's just they didn't really earn the extra money. Their team didn't get to the postseason.
I will say this though, and to counter that, and maybe I'm wrong about this, it is a shared revenue for the NHL. So if those teams that lost money, they could actually benefit. And here's another counter argument: no home advantage for any of the playoff teams. So if you pick a playoff team, they actually have a home advantage. But if you actually pick a city where no team is playing in the playoffs, right? So we have those 6 teams right now, or I'm sorry, 7 teams. One of those 7 teams are not in the playoffs. You know, just saying, there's no home advantage there, right?
Oh yeah,
it's just another angle. But I do agree with you. I do agree with the playoff reward and all that as well. And it's unfortunate, man. I actually. It really makes me sad, the amount of money lost. And it's not really that I think about it like from a millionaires get richer standpoint. It's like how many people who work, you know, the concession stands, who work in the parking lots, who work, who work to keep the buildings clean, sanitized, up to date, the ice people, the equipment people. Like literally, you can just keep going. The lights, the sound, the television broadcast, the cameraman. Like literally, I can just keep going. How many people can't work? How many people are worried that they won't have that job? Like, honestly, I hope this comes back as soon as possible. I hope this hub city, they hire 2 of everybody, just if they can, you know. It's
just a shame that we're not going to hear Lou. You could admit it. It's a shame we're not going to hear Lou Nolan.
Yeah.
Flyers.
Well, it'll be a historic playoff regardless, which is kind of cool. So even if like the Flyers win on this weird, obscure, it would still be awesome. You know, it's almost like they come through the rubble and just still come up on top, because everybody's kind of been sitting on their ass a little bit. We know it. Outside of Provorov, 80% of the league has probably been taking it easy, right? And then there's like 20% of them been working hard, and then 1% of them are acting like Provorov, where they still think the series, is on. You know,
Hague's been skating in Sweden too.
That's awesome.
You know?
Well,
so
I hope they all.
Hague is ready to go. You know, him as well. Now, in terms of when he's coming over, I don't know. But, the Flyers, you see the players starting to trickle back, a lot of them anyway.
Probably in July, right?
Right. But, I mean, is Provorov and Coots, have they absolutely left the skate zone? I'm pretty sure they're sleeping in there. I can see them right next to the arcade there. They got that arcade game, in between where they play, what's that hockey game called? You know what I mean?
Shuffle? What's that? What, the shuffle? The bubble hockey you're talking about?
Yeah, the bubble hockey. Yeah.
I didn't know.
You know what I'm talking about?
I forget the actual name for that, though.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah.
They're probably sleeping next to those machines. I mean, because you could use either ice, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, listen, I would hope that a lot of them are taking this. Actually, I thought about it, like the amount of time off and the fact that they don't really know when they're coming back. Because I was listening to some of those interviews, right? The Joel Farabee and the Sean Couturier interviews that came out today, and it's just interesting the mind game that they kind of been through, right? Because how many of them weren't really sure how to train and when to get ready, and it's just not the same train, and that goes for everybody, right? It's gonna be this weird start to the playoffs, but probably very weird.
Yeah.
Probably just feel like preseason.
Oh yeah, preseason. Yeah, it's gonna be something weird, like you said, weird. Just because, the preseason, there's not many fans there, and the fans that are there, are there because they're diehards. And sometimes there's just, let's be honest, sometimes they just want to see the team, or there's not much else to do. So why not go to a Flyers game, or something, of that nature? Just it's a night out on town,
God, I miss that. I miss going to a Flyers game so much right now. So hold on. So real quick. Sorry, Jamie. Go ahead. Finish your thought there, buddy.
I mention one thing because there's a few things that are circulating around, and I don't know if we're going to touch on it. So, Phase 3 in terms of the training camps, who knows if there's going to be spectators? It may or may not. And the reason I say may or may not is because there's no spectators for the games. Do they really want spectators there? For training camp. That's just my.
That's a weird look.
You know what I mean? Like you're allowing spectators there for training camp, but not allowing spectators for a game. And that's just my thought process behind that. And I know we weren't going to touch on it. That's all I just wanted to say was that, since we were on the topic of like hub cities and stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good info. I mean, I think overall though. I'm just happy the hockey's coming back. So what do you guys think about the delay, though, and what happens if things transition all the way to, I don't know, let's say the playoffs realistically don't end till October, and they need a couple months off, and we're talking about the December, maybe early January time for the start of next season. Joe, I'll start with you again on this one. What do you think about that? What do you think about a late start where it's pretty much reminiscent of a lockout, right? A post-lockout type of season. And a full season at that. I believe they committed to that.
Yeah, they did almost commit to that full-heartedly, which shocked me that they did that this early. But I was going to say it also is going to depend on how the ECHL starts. The AHL, that said they're going to try to still start on time. Because if I'm able to do stuff like that, that'll appease me for a bit. Because coming back around the holidays, my birthday's Christmas. So coming back around the holidays works out fine for me on a selfish standpoint because I get to see the first Flyers game right around or right after when my birthday is. So that works out perfectly fine for me. As for everyone else, I'm not sure how everyone else is going to feel because I don't think everyone else is going, oh, well, if the ECHL comes back, I'm just going to go to Reading every day. Or if Lehigh comes back, I'm just going to go to Lehigh every day because everyone's not going to even feel safe about going if we're allowed to have fans. That's another side we have to consider right away. So that's something, but that will be able to appease me for a period of time. So I would say depends how that goes, but I would be perfectly fine with it because that would be right around my birthday. So that would be a perfect birthday present having the NHL start up right around my birthday time. So.
I love that quite a bit, actually. Jamie, what do you think?
Well, to what Joe was saying, I think December, January is a perfect, a perfect time, for the season to begin. I don't think that months should matter. Now, what I would like to see the NHL do is have a condensed schedule. I wouldn't play an 82-game season and have 3 or 4 games a week. Take out the All-Star break, take out the mandatory bye. That's 2 free weeks. So what do you get? Maybe 8 more games, on top. So as opposed to playing 74, you would play your 82. I'd like to see a shortened season, maybe a 48 to a 52 game season. We had a shortened season for a lockout season. They've done it before. They're experienced in that area, the NHL. It's not like they haven't done it before. It's not like it hasn't worked before. I just, I'd like to try to think of these athletes as human beings and not robots because if you want to play 82 games, great. But you're going to see a lot more injuries, a lot more fluke stuff, people cramping. You might actually see some stars do what the NBA does, sit Claude Giroux for maybe 2 or 3 days, whereas Joel Embiid, you see him sitting sometimes, for rest. Well, that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to sit Sean Couturier, for 2 or 3 games. Sit
good luck
for 2 or 3 games. You're going to have to sit Jake Voracek for 2 or 3 games. I mean, these are some things that
they're
the NHL
never going to agree to that.
Well, I'm just saying.
I'm saying the players will go nuts. Anyway, keep going. No, I think you're right. I think you're right, though. I think you bring up a good point.
The players won't. Like, you won't see Ivan Provorov ever sit a game. You know what I mean? So, realistically, you're correct. But what I'm saying is you're going to see a lot more injuries in the same token as well, or possibly could. Now, one thing that Joe mentioned the AHL, ECHL, season. If it starts up in October, that is a great point. You know why? Because some of the black aces for the Flyers will be up. Now, given the Flyer and some other teams, their black aces are going to be up with them as well, for playoffs and, different things and stuff. And you don't know who's going to be in and who won't. The good thing about the Philadelphia Flyers is that their farm system would be able to withstand a minus, I have Morgan Frost making the team next year, but let's just say hypothetically he does not. They should be able to withstand a minus of Morgan Frost, a David Kasha, a Carson Chorinsky, a Connor Bunneman. They should be able to withstand, some of these black aces that may be will be up with the Flyers, for the extended playoff run. But it's going to be interesting because Alex Lyon is, of course, a black ace, and he's an unrestricted free agent. So I don't see that the AHL season could actually play in October, basically because they don't know some of these unrestricted free agents on where they would sign. So you can't just say, okay,
you know what's interesting? No, that's a great point, and I wonder if there's going to be some kind of massive exception for some of these contracts, or maybe they agree to an extension for most of them, where they extend the contract. These are really good points, Jamie, and it shows how messy all of this is. But yeah, I think that's why we were talking about, could this be a permanent change of some sort, right? Like if they're doing this whole shift, could we maybe always see the season start at a later date now, like November, December from here on out? And maybe the hockey goes into the summer, and that's just kind of a permanent shift, just to account for all these shifts that they have to make at once and all these leagues and all the unknowns. What do you guys think about it, Joe? Or go ahead.
It is so funny you say that. You know why? It's funny you say that because the MLB, with the way everything's working out for the MLB right now, for hockey to play into the summer, it would be great. Because then people would be like, oh, okay, this is a sport that reconvened, whereas the MLB couldn't get their act together. I don't know. That's all I wanted to add into that.
I love that. Joe, what do you think, man?
I was just going to say, I think it's fine because if the NHL has to change, I won't love it, because my one friend pointed out to me that the NFL adding a week 17, their schedule goes back an extra week, pushing back the playoffs, especially this year. So the playoffs don't start until the 9th of January. So you're still playing at the beginning of the season then with the money period of the NFL. So that's going to be odd for ratings for the NHL and probably not the best for them, especially even if you try to start on the Winter Classic. Because even if you try to start on the Winter Classic, if there's an NFL game going in the playoffs combined to the Winter Classic, most people are probably going to pick the NFL game. Just, I would think, going into, especially if they have a fantasy, they bet on it, like they're definitely probably going to pay attention to that game. So that's something that concerns me. Like I said, I'm fine with it because it would be starting around my birthday, but they would have to figure out logistics with TV deals. They have TV deals expiring soon, and that's something that new networks are probably going to pick up the NHL possibly within the next year or so with the TV deals expiring. So that'll be interesting to follow as well as we move into next season and beyond. So
yeah, well, it's actually interesting. I do want to talk about that for a second, actually, about the network deals. What was his name? Max. What was his name? The guy on ESPN. I don't want to say the wrong name.
Max.
What was the guy?
Oh, Holloway? I know. Say his Holloway. Yeah, that guy. I thought you were talking about the guy with the last name. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. I'm not. Honestly, I don't dislike him. I don't really care about him. I don't really care about ESPN, quite frankly, at all. Especially nowadays, like I could care less what they have to say. I don't even think that TV has so much to do with sports anymore. But besides that, I know we all heard that comment about hockey, and I just want to point something out, that ESPN right now has the lowest ratings it's ever had, and I said this at the time he said this, and I don't care if they deny it. It is pure jealousy. They had the ability to sign with the NHL a long time ago for a vastly cheaper price. Today, the NHL has a partnership with NBC and Comcast. That price is a lot higher now. And now with ESPN's ratings being so low, where they've been for a while, because of their decision making, and especially for their hockey coverage. They fired almost everybody good. They have a lot to complain about, because if they want back in, they're going to have to pay more than they paid originally, and they're not going to be liked by their audience. So they have a problem. So I just want to comment on that, on their, hockey, nobody cares about hockey. I don't care, and neither does the world. And I'll be completely frank with you. I think everybody who heard that comment just roll their eyes. It's like, we'll be surprised if ESPN is still around in the future at the rate that they're going. And again, this is not a knock on ESPN. I want to see them back to where they were. I don't see it. I see better coverage on the internet. I see better coverage. Like, why would I go to ESPN when I can listen to Bill Meltzer and Jason Martino? Like, why? Why would I even waste my time going to ESPN to give me some washed down version of hockey where I can go to get in-depth analysis? I'd rather go to Canada, rather go to TSN. They'll give it the attention and detail it deserves. So I don't care that they don't care about hockey. We don't care about them. The relationship is mutual. I just wanted to get that out. It's just like, I hear it all the time. It's like, I don't care.
That's, what was it? We don't like you either. You remember that? You remember what playoffs was that? 2011-12, where Crosby was like, he was asked this question. He was like, I don't like anything about it. I don't like him. And then it came out with the T-shirt for the next game. Like, huh? What?
He didn't like Voracek. It was Voracek that got under his skin. Yeah.
And Crosby's like, I don't like him. I don't like him. Well, guess what? We don't like you either. And take that, ESPN. But you know what I wanted to say? Joe, I'm buying Joe an edible arrangement. I'm buying him an edible arrangement for his birthday.
Okay, thank you.
You know what? You have mentioned your birthday like 3 or 4 times, man. Yo, listen, man, I can't get more giddy for a birthday. I need a birthday now, man. I need a birthday cake.
Well, we're having to get a time machine
birthday tomorrow. That's where I'm at. Huh?
Well, we'll have to get a time machine for it to be too soon, because it's still quite a few months away, Christmas.
Well, first of all, we're going to have to remember that birthday. Take note of that, Jamie. Let's not forget that one. But now that we're talking about presents, we're talking about gifts, let's talk about something a little more relevant. Let's talk about awards, right? And this would be a gift, probably some well-deserved. We have some names going around for the Flyers. It's been a while, by the way, since the Flyers were really considered. I'm going to go back just real quick before we go into this to Claude Giroux not getting at least top 3 in Hart voting after being second in the league for points. And being of those top 3, or at least of the top 2, being the only one to make it into the playoffs, I have never seen that ever before. Ever. I saw Jamie Benn get his butt kicked by Voracek all year long in points. He had a really good end of the season. He beat him out with an 8-point game at the end of the year. He beat out Voracek, I think, by 1 point, and he won the Hart Trophy. And to not even see Giroux get a vote for the top 3, I thought was so insulting. But outside of that, this year, AV for the Jack, Coots for the Selke, and Fletcher for GM of the Year. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's finally time? I do think that AV had a great season. I think if the season would have kept going and the Flyers would have had great success, it would have been almost a no-brainer. It's a little tougher to do that without the season finishing out. We already know about Coots, and you can make a case he should have won last year. So this is just a guy who's ready for it. And then Chuck Fletcher. I mean, overall, my current stance, Fletcher has done a fantastic job, and maybe he hasn't done the best. I think I'd have to go through that full evaluation, but I see no reason why he's not in the conversation. Joe, I want to start with you again, since you're the guest. What do you think? What about the 3, AV, Coots, Fletch? You think they have chance?
Yeah, I think AV should definitely have a chance. I think it's unfortunate, like you said, because if we kept rolling the way we were, I don't think there would have been much of a debate where every article I've been reading in recent weeks is this is the hardest award to pick for people to predict who's going to win, because it's so close with the standings when everything stopped and everything. And you got different reasons for different people to win. AV would be he got so much out of everybody. He knew how to greatly fix his lines and kind of weave in and out people and know when to give someone more minutes when they were on and when they were off. And that's kind of similarly to how Barry Trotz is in New York, who obviously won last year because he obviously took a team that nobody thought after losing Tavares after the season prior would be like, yeah, you know what, guys, we're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. So nobody thought that was happening last year. And then a guy that I think is going to get some merit this year, whether he should get a lot because they're not the highest ranked team, but they did well in the wild card standings, is Maurice, just because you figure they lost Truber, Myers, Ben Chariot, and Bufflin, and had kind of, other than Pionk and Morrissey, a piece together defense that they still were able to kind of roll out there. Connor Hellbuck played like a Vezina trophy win. I don't think he'll win the Vezina. I think it'll go to Rask, but he played like one of those guys that contend for it. So for me, I think that's his competition, but I think AV beats them because of what I said. He came in first year. He was able to weave in. People got injured. Some got Abe Kubel jumped back up, played well. Bonneman's been up a couple times, has always inserted himself well. Kase's looked well in the few games he's been in. Obviously showed his great ability to go in front of the net on the one goal he did score. So I think he should be the consideration there. As for GM, I only wrote one guy down in competition for Fletcher. For me, I think it's only because they continue to do well. They're not as big of a market as us, Toronto, Boston, LA. Colorado could be it because they brought in Kadri, they brought in others. They had great drafts, getting McKinnon, Rodden, McCarr, and Byram recently. So Joe Sakic, a great NHL player, also is becoming a very good NHL GM. Yeah. I think he's a guy, well, a pretty good NHL GM. It took him a few, but they've been successful in recent years. So I think he's a competition for him because of his draft. Plus, he's been finally bringing in guys for the NHL team the past 3 years. That's been showing them upticking in the standings. Where obviously, I think we know who the competition is for Coots. It's been usually the same competition for some. Patrice Bergeron's won the Selke 4 times in his career. He probably should have won it more times, which is why I also think it's time to change it up because he's already won it 4. People argue he should have won it more. So let's just keep changing the guard. There's no point I keep giving it to the Taze's of the world or the Bergerons of the world. And first of all, Jonathan Toews is in the top 3 this year. He had a solid season, but there's no question Jonathan Toews should be in the top 3 this year. That's complete bias if Jonathan Toews finishes ahead of Ryan O'Reilly and even a guy like Denault, who was the best possession forward in terms of hockey. So those would be my top 3. It would be, I would put Couturier winning, Bergeron, and then O'Reilly if I had to rank the Selke, because I think they're going to favor Patrice Bergeron like they always do, so he might get ahead of Ryan O'Reilly by a tad.
Wow. That's pretty good analysis. Jamie, what do you think, buddy?
Dude, that's kind of hard to man, dude, it sucks to go second with this one, dude. That's like, you know, man, that was just so darn good. Like, Joe, I haven't seen a rundown like that in a long time, man. That was like everything from A to B, and you give points and everything, man. God, that's pretty hard to come back, man. Damn, I wish I went first. Oh, well, it didn't happen, so just got to take it from there, man. But that, honestly, listen, all jokes aside, that was a hell of a rundown there. Hell of a rundown.
Thank you.
But I know this is a Flyer-centric podcast, and people are going to throw apples at me, and that's fine. But I honestly believe that Torts actually wins the Jack Adams Awards here. And the reason I say that, AV was phenomenal. Everyone knows my love for AV. I don't think the Flyers would be where they're at without AV. You know, finally, and Reef, you know what I'm talking about from being around the team. When was the last time you saw a head coach with personality, you know, inside that locker room and on the ice, and you could see it just from the drop of the puck? I was there at the first day of training camp in the press box, and you could hear AV when we're sitting inside the press area, not on the balconies. You could hear him yelling from the ice. And honestly, under Dave Haxtell, and I'm not bashing Dave Haxtell, I just didn't hear that. So you knew that he commanded a voice. He commanded a presence from the first day that he was on that ice. AV did a phenomenal job. He's definitely worthy of the award. But Torts, you figure this guy lost Sergei Bobrovsky, lost Artemi Panarin, lost Matt Duchene. I mean, the list just goes on and on of who this guy lost, and somehow they're in the freaking playoffs. You know, like, how did that happen? Because, you know, I'm sitting here, and I bet you there's a lot of people in the hockey world that can't even name 5 players on that team right now. I bet you that people can name Werenski, they can name Elvis, and they can name Cam Atkinson, but who else? I bet you nobody even knows who they are.
Seth Jones.
Like, well, yeah, good point.
Corby, too, if he comes back.
Well, I'm just saying, like, who can people name 5 players on that
No,
team?
no,
Kind of hard.
no. I think
I don't think
your point
Cavs
is
fans
well
would be able
taken.
to-
Whereas the Flyers, you can name Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek, Sean Couturier. People know Travis Konechny because of who he is. People know Carter Hart.
Well,
People know Brian Elliott. People know all these guys.
In fairness, I mean, I think that's why there's so much attention coming to AV. It's not so much that like he's had nothing to work with, and it's the change in culture in such a short amount of time. It's the fact that the Flyers literally are almost the same team that they were the year before. Like you talked about, right? I don't actually think that Niskanen and Hayes and oh my God, Braun and the other additions that they were the end all be all to the change. I think they were part of the recipe that brought on a potential championship caliber team. But I think even just AV alone and the coaching staff, I think you would have seen a completely different team than the year before. And I think it's to your point and why Torts is a good coach, even though he has his kind of shelf life in a way. But he knows how to squeeze talent out of his team and know how to get the most out of his team. I think that's what you're trying to get to, and I think Torts definitely deserves credit for that. And I think you're definitely correct. But I think AV has done a very similar thing, and we're a much better team. We have better names. We're also a better team than the Blue Jackets today.
They're miles ahead of the Blue Jackets. So that's not even a question. In terms of development and stuff, yeah, they're light years ahead of them. That was not even a question. But I just said, honestly, I like the job that Torts did over there. It was unbelievable what I thought. I think that AV gets a nod over Mike Sullivan. Mike Sullivan was very good for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They lost half their team, and somehow they still managed to compete. They didn't lose a game without Crosby, and Jake Voracek told me that a lot, in an interview in January, I think. But I'll tell you this, I think that Coots wins the Selke finally. I think it's what Joe was hinting at. I think it's a changing of the guard. I think he has to win the Selke. For him not to win the Selke, I think that's a travesty if he does not, to be honest. I mean, the guy just does everything. He's the last one off the ice. I mean, he's on the ice for a half hour after practice almost every practice. He had 22 goals, 37 assists. He was tied for the team, tied for second on the team in assists to Travis Konechny with 37 as well. But the guy just name a shift that he took off this year. Anybody that watches the team, you cannot even mention one shift that this guy took off. He plays hurt. He plays with sickness. He reminds me of Michael Jordan playing with the flu. And evidently, when Coots is either hurt or has a sickness, look, he had 2 goals in a game that he wasn't even supposed to play.
He had 6 points with a torn meniscus, if I remember correctly. It was a 6 or 5 points.
That's what I'm saying. He plays his best games. He plays it. That's where I'm getting at. So I think that he's deserving. I just Fletcher. I think Joe Sakic has him beat. In my opinion, there Fletcher had. I do not even see one bad move that Chuck Fletcher made this past offseason at all. People keep going back to Cam Talbot. Okay, the Cam Talbot trade with Anthony Stolarz. First off, to put that to rest right now, that was the prior season. That wasn't this off season. When a lot of people were talking about
it,
Fletcher
also wasn't a bad move.
No, I mean, dude,
it wasn't really.
Stolarz is a free agent. We got Cam Talbot for the run. Doesn't make any sense.
The Flyers weren't going anywhere at that time. So you know what? He was like, why don't I try to get something for a guy that may not return next season, who has been injury riddled, who has proven that unfortunately he couldn't stay out. Now he did put together a decent year with the Ducks over there, and I'm happy for him.
He's going to be an NHL backup in my opinion.
He is, yes. If he can stay healthy, Anthony Stolarz definitely has a career in the NHL, and I wish him nothing but the best because I love Stoley, the goalie. And when that trade went down, to me, I was scratching my head too. I ain't even gonna lie. I was definitely scratching my head. But at the end of the day, at the end of the season, I was like, you know what? I'm okay with that deal because where were the Flyers going? if they could get Cam Talbot for maybe $2.5 million, like they signed, Brian Elliott, Cam didn't want to sign for 2.5. He wanted to start. And that's why he didn't want to re-sign. That's why Chuck Fletcher went and re-signed Brian Elliott. I can't say that Brian Elliott was the guy from the start. They made, honestly, Fletcher, because of the relationship that Carter Hart had with Cam Talbot could have had a nod, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because of the relationship. And that's what, I wanted to focus on, was the relationship that Elliott had with Carter Hart. Because Carter Hart told me in February that they had a great relationship. And, why, Fletcher nailed almost every move this past offseason. I won't even say almost every single move this past offseason because, bringing in a Justin, taking guts, to trade away a second and a third for Justin Braun, who I thought was the San Jose Sharks' best defenseman during the third playoff run the year before. People were pissed off about it. And I think people were pissed off because they didn't know. And that's the thing. Like, oh, we got who? Well, if you watch
everybody also said he was a product of Vlasic.
What's that?
Everybody also said he was a product of Vlasic and their other good defensemen. That was another thing.
Yeah, it's just excuses though. Hockey is such a team game. I think it's kind of the point though, Jamie, is that Fletcher didn't make any fancy, flashy moves. And that's probably what will hold him back from getting the Jack Adams trophy. But, all the moves he made were very moderate. I would actually say Niskanen was, the big splash trade.
It took him balls to trade a pick for Kevin Hayes. That took a lot of balls there. And I think, you know what, that just shows, that when he...
You know what? I give you that. Because it was aggressive. It was aggressive when he needed to be. That's a good point, Jamie. Because I remember at that time, everybody's like, oh, I remember even I thought, I was like, oh, Kevin Hayes, you can get him on the market. But they knew, there's something to say about a man who has a plan, right? He had a plan. He goes, I need this center, I need this, I need that. Obviously, the Nolan Patrick thing was in the background, right? So spending a pick is kind of a must-do there. But at the same time, the guy knew what he needed. He knew what he needed. He went all out. He put all the pieces together. He waited patiently all season when everybody said, trade this person, fire this person. He didn't do anything. He did his plan, and it worked. It worked. It really did.
I love it how you say that, man. I love it when you do that, man. You said, trade this person, fire.
I know. I wanted to say, though, before we move too far on, because we brought up Talbot, I honestly think he's a guy, if we're not able to keep Elliott, and we don't keep Elliott after this year, since he has a relationship with Hart from back in the day, you're probably going to see him be a likely guy. He had good stats this year, 2.63 goals against. So if he was able to come back for us and want to be a backup platoon guy, that would work perfect. So Cam Talbot's the guy that I think is going to be able to figure it out and come back here, and we might see him back if Elliott doesn't stay. He would be my number one. There's a dog.
Yeah, it's my dog because there's explosions going on because I live in Philadelphia. And just random explosions all the time. Oh, yeah. I don't know what it is. Most likely it's like an M80 or maybe a firework. But sometimes it's more, I don't know. I just ignore them. It's okay, doggy. It will be okay. All right, back to hockey. But I was thinking... Before we go too deep into this, we have kind of a big update today, and this is kind of the more exciting nerd out moment for us. World Junior Summer Showcase was announced. 2 of our boys made it. Sadly, Jay O'Brien is not part of that. I kind of expected that. I think we all kind of expected that to step back, but I don't expect him to be out of the mix in the future. I will say that. But our big boys kind of got a name. Bobby Brink and Cam York. These are 2 players who we're all very excited about. They've both been invited. I'm excited about them both as players. Cam York, I see as a potential top pairing guy. I see him extremely mature. I think the Flyers kind of took a risk on a guy that there really is no risk on. And if he can be that Brian Leach type of player, it'd be a phenomenal pick. And then Bobby Brink is a guy I see hopefully can do a Travis Konechny type of growth path. And, take all the flaws that people say you have, kind of brush all those aside and end up being one of the best players available. And to the Travis Konechny comparison. Again, Konechny did not get the love that he deserved playing for Team Canada. He got put in a fourth-line role. And I remember that whole time. Every time he played, he made an impact, and they would not put him in a position to succeed. Not ultimately. And it showed, right? Konechny got to the next level. Didn't matter. He exploded. I'm hoping to see something similar from Bobby Brink, and I think we see a little bit of that in his game. Joe, I'll have you go first again here. What do you think about Bobby Brink and Cam York getting in the invites? Not that shocking, but what do you think?
I think it's a very good thing. It's not shocking, like you said, but it's great for them to get as much experience as possible under their belt and the toughest competitive versions of the game, because they're the first round pick, Cam York. I was actually at the Phillies game during that draft last year, my buddy, and all I heard from behind at Harry the Cage was, what the hell? Because I think Caulfield was still on there when we picked Cam York, so I heard about 7 guys just yell at him. My friend was up there buying something, and he comes back down and he goes, yeah, a bunch of people are pissed off. And I'm like, why is everyone pissed off? And he's like, the Flyers just drafted a defenseman instead of a scorer. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't that unexpected. We tend to build from our defense first. We'll probably draft someone like, and I actually said we'll probably draft someone like Brink in the second round. And then like 35, 40 minutes, whatever it was, he's like, oh yeah, we drafted Bobby Brink in the second round. Excuse me. How'd you know that? I was like, I was just looking at a lot of mocks before and reading a lot of things, and I was like, that just makes sense. You want another guy that can score, put the puck in the net, also be that tenacity type guy like TK. So that's a good comparison. A guy that can piss off the other team, but also keep his game going at the same rate and not affect his own game. That's somebody you can see Brink become that great over 20-some goal scorer like TK can become. We need another guy like that on our team. And then York is going to be a stellar defenseman. That's why I had no problem picking him. I just think people freaked out because they were going Caulfield. And that didn't happen. So people freaked out. A lot of people at the Phillies game, at least, that were also Flyers fans, freaked out behind me when that happened. So that was just a funny story about that. But I think both of them are going to be a great part of the core, and getting as much experience as possible is key for the guys of that age.
Yeah. And just real quick, Jamie, before I let you comment, let's name some of these guys. John Beecher made the team, Matthew Boldy, Cole Caulfield, Arthur Kaliev, Alex Turcotte. Obviously, we can keep Trevor Zegras. Obviously, a lot of these names are really big names here. So just a really great company to be part of, and just something that everybody should be aware of. Like, these U.S. program is just awesome now. So the fact that the Flyers have 2 guys part of this program, it is very impressive. Jamie, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think Chris Nolt did a heck of a job with that program years ago. He was the guy who was, sort of leading the charge there for the USHL, and really brought, a lot of good players in and stuff. And shout out to Chris Nolt. I think he did a phenomenal job in terms of bringing in the right batch, scouts, having the good scouts. The U.S. game was, going down for a while, but they're on a tear here as of late. They're really putting forth, some really good players. I mean, anytime you're talking about Trevor Zegras, John Beecher, and Alex Turcotte, that means you're doing something well. Bobby Brink is doing something well. That guy could just come down the flank and just pick a spot on the net where he wants to shoot and hit it. If he wants to go upper right-hand corner, the guy's going upper right-hand corner. The Flyers, we haven't seen that in some time, to where we've had a natural goal scorer, a pure goal scorer like that in some time, to where a guy can pick a spot at the net and hit it. The only other guy in their system that I can see like that, right now there's a few, just Pascal LeBerge, and you got Matthew Strome. And again, LeBerge just has to stay healthy, and Matthew Strome, has to work on his footwork, much like Bobby Brink. But Bobby Brink, I scouted him the year before. He was on the slower scale, so to speak, but slow at that, it depends on age. He was, 17 years old at that particular time? So at 17, you got room to grow. Your legs get stronger, as time goes on. When you turn 18, 19, if you work on your legs and do your cardio, you could become faster. And that's what happened to him for Denver, because I watched some games for him, and I was like, damn. Now, he's playing against men, mind you. there are some guys, there are some players there that are 23, 22, and 23 years old, and here he is, 18, and he's blowing by them, and I'm like, wow, man, you could tell he really worked. And when I had an interview with him in February, he told me he worked day in and day out on his skating to get bigger and stronger. He wanted to get his legs bigger and stronger because he knew that was going to be an area of focus, that the Flyers pretty much told him, hey, go get your footwork together. Try to get your first step together. Those are some things that he took away from the Flyers, from the time at Flyers camps. Now, of course, he couldn't attend, training camp because of NCAA regulations, but, Flyers developmental camp and whatnot. But, yeah, I'm not surprised by Cam York. I don't really need to go into him because he's our best prospect in the system. The guy is phenomenal. That's it. There's no doubt in my mind that he can play top pairing minutes with Ivan Provorov. And I could definitely possibly see him making the team out of into the 2021 season when he signs an ELC after this year for the University of Michigan. There is no reason to
totally agree with that
that he isn't light years ahead of competition. I mean, I haven't seen this type of player in a while. So to pass up, was I upset when the Flyers passed up on Cole Caulfield? I was one of those, Joe. I was like, what the heck is going on here, right? But, because it's an initial shock. But after, I'm going to be honest, it took me about a half hour. But after that, and evaluating and taking the expansion draft into consideration, I was like, you know what? That was a bold pick by Fletcher. He was thinking ahead, which some GMs haven't yet in terms of the expansion draft. He thought in his mind that more than likely with the logjam he had at defense coming, because at that time he didn't, but coming because of all the signings that he had this year and the signings that are still looming in terms of Lyle Kalnick, he knew that he had a logjam eventually at the Flyers defensive level, and at Flyers and Phantoms. So he was like, okay, more than likely I'm going to lose a defenseman, or, possibly. It could very well possibly be. So let me select Cam York and say Ghost. Ghost gets selected to Seattle. Now, I don't think that will happen because I think there would be a trade before that. But I'm just saying, he's thinking ahead. Smart guy, because
sure.
Why? I think that York could possibly, I won't say he'd be as good as Ghost or, whatever on the power play, be that guy, be an integral part right away in terms of the power play unit and, where he excels. And,
sure.
I don't think that may be the case, but overall, as a defenseman, I think that Cam York could replace, a defenseman, to be honest, in my opinion.
For sure.
I just see Bobby Brink signing an ELC as well. I don't see him going back to Denver for a junior year. That's just my gut feeling. This is no sources behind it. It's just a gut feeling. I just see Bobby Brink just saying, you know what, it's time, because we're looking at this pandemic and there's a lot of instability still. There's talk about a second wave or possibly shutting this down or possibly shutting that down. I think that, players are going to get concerned for next year in terms of contracts, and stuff. So I think that Bobby Brink.
Well, Jamie, I think that's a good time to lead into our next one. I mean, we still want to talk about Wyatt Kalynuk, right? So we're actually coming to that point right now. I think we have until the 24th, Jamie, I believe is the date, right? I think is that the deadline? 26th, sorry. So we have until June 26th to essentially get him locked down. Now, I'm still pretty confident. Again, he's a 7th round pick. There's really no reason he shouldn't be signing with the Flyers. Do you guys think that he still has a shot here to get signed? Joe, I'll go to you first, and then Jamie, obviously, chime in. Where do you guys see here as we kind of get into the last 10 days of that window?
Yeah, well, I know when this question was sent over, we were talking about leverage, and I thought immediately the question should not really be leverage. I think it's more if he's assessing the situation or not, because we have, obviously, like we just talked about with York coming up as well, we have Jamula, who's training with the Yager work ethic defenseman of our team, and Provorov, which is great. And you have Sanheim, Provy, Hagup, you got Wyatt Wiley, Adam Jennings, who didn't sign yet, but you still have all these other prospects. that I think he might be assessing the situation going, they do have a crap ton of defensemen. So do I want to go into that situation, even though he's playing so well? Because if everyone else is playing well, you're just naturally not going to get a chance, because if someone's also young is playing well, the only guys that would give you a chance are Niski, but Niskanen's probably, if he plays well, I would think at least going to get another year tagged on if he continues to play well next year. Braun will probably stay if he continues to play well. So those are the only options you could see subtracting, because Hag played amazing this year. And like Jamie said, he's still showing his amazing work ethic, still working out in Sweden most days skating. I can't see them taking him out if he continues to play well. So it might be more, the word I looked for was assessing the situation, is why I feel like he probably hasn't signed yet, because he's probably going, this team does have a truckload of defensemen. Am I going to fit into the puzzle necessarily, rather than doing what Bernhardt did and trying to assess his situation by becoming a free agent? And like our GM said, they're still playing on what his situation is going down the line, so we'll see what happens there. Or our assistant GM, Brett Fair, excuse me. And that's something that's interesting to see, so it'll see what happens, but I could see it being the same thing. But I'm still confident in her sign, because like you said, 7th-round picks, usually your later-round picks tend to sign with you if you want them. So, but based off of the amount of defensemen we have, that's why I had question more.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty fair, and that's why I bring that up, right? We talk about York, we know Zamula, and again, I don't have to name everybody, but Wiley, we could just keep going. The Flyers do have a logjam, and he's of age to start being a pro. Jamie, what do you think, man? I know obviously we keep talking about him, but
he just brought up some really good points there. It's kind of hard again to come in and say anything, because that is a very good point. In terms of the logjam at D, where is he going to see himself? Obviously, everybody is worried about playing time, and playing time. He could go to maybe Toronto and start, or he may go, because the Avalanche needs some defensive help too, or the Arizona Coyotes. I'm just naming teams here to where he can say, okay, I can see Winnipeg, great team, good point. So you're seeing all these different teams that he says, okay, I might have to spend some time in the AHL, but I could also see a call up. But here's what I say to that: yes, Wiley signed. Yes, Zamula signed. Yes, Cam York's going to sign an ELC. Yes, Adam Ginnick is going to sign an ELC. You know what? Then be better than them. Prove your worth. Prove that you can be better. This, in my opinion, this should like fuel under his belt and say, you know what? I need to get my crap together. I need to be a better defenseman or do whatever, because I'm going to beat them. This should be good competition, because this could, with him, if that is the case, which I sort of believe you are correct, that he is, taking everything into consideration, and that's why he hasn't made, a decision yet. And I'm pretty sure he's probably talking about it with his family and stuff, where he wants to see himself fit. But like, be better. You can do it. The defensive and goaltending positions are the two most unpredictable decisions in the sport of hockey. Just because people are pegged ahead of you today does not mean that they're a pegged ahead of you tomorrow. Then there's injuries. Who's to say that, Felipe Myers doesn't get hurt next year? Who's to say that Robert Haig doesn't get hurt? Who's to say that Robert Haig's back at all? Who's to say that Shane Gothisbehere? There's a lot of question marks in terms of the Flyers' defense, next season, because like you said, you mentioned the logjam at D. They're going to have Samuel Moran back healthy. They're going to have Ghost back healthy. Ghost is already healthy, but that's 8 defensemen right there. So what is Chuck Fletcher going to do? Is he going to roll with 8 defensemen again? I don't know. I'm not going to say yes or no, with that, but, these are some question marks, but he can do it. He can do it. If his mindset is there, he can do it. It does not mean that Zamula is just going to be a shoo-in. He's coming off back surgery. Yes, he's working out at the skate zone. He will not be a black ace, for those wondering. He will not be. The Flyers are not going to risk his career to be a black ace coming off a back surgery that kept him out 3 to 4 months. It's just not going to happen. I just don't foresee that. I have seen that floating around Twitter saying that Zamula should be a black ace. I just wanted to throw that out there somewhere on the podcast. So this is a great point to say that. I do not. Zamula will. No, I will climb Billy Penn if Zamula is Black Ace, in my opinion. I just don't foresee it. I just don't foresee the Flyers putting coming off some type of significant injury out there during a heated competition like the playoffs, because playoffs are different from the regular season. It's a different beast. But aside from that, who's to say that Zamula's game is going to correlate to the AHL level and to the pro level? Just because he lit it up in juniors, and just because I think that he probably will, doesn't mean he will. He still has to go out and prove it. We have seen players in the past to where they can't get past the AHL level for whatever reason. They block out at the NHL level. Misha is a perfect example of that. The dude has all the talent in the world. Mikhail Vorobyev has all the talent in the world.
Absolutely.
But for some damn reason, when he gets called up to the NHL level, I don't know if it's comfortability or whatever, or scared, or maybe he's not putting in enough work ethic or whatever. His game does just not correlate from the AHL at this point right now.
No. I think you bring up a really good point. The only reason I'm jumping in there is because I'm just sitting here thinking. I mean, that's kind of where Kalynuk sits, is somebody like Vorobyev. I mean, if you think about what Vorobyev was, he's a player who, not that we never thought he would be nothing, but he kind of exceeded expectations. He came over to the North American game, had good success in the AHL, came into that preseason where you're like, okay, if somehow the Flyers found a top 6 forward in the midst of this, and then he just never manages to do it again. I think I still imagine more from Vorobyev. Like, I still see an NHL future for him and whatnot. But Kalynuk is kind of in that same age window, so he's going to have that same battle. So while he's looking for opportunity, I mean, I totally agree with you, Jamie. He has to prove it too. But, Joe's also bringing up a great point. Is this where he wants to have that battle against Zamula, York, Haig, and all of a sudden even Samuel Morin? Does he want to have that battle here? I don't know. I would hope that he would. But
I'm still 90% confident that he will sign, because at the end of the day, he's best buds with Travis Sanheim. I think that, him and Travis will have, a good talk. I think that he's going to work with Travis. I think that Travis will help him, become familiar with the Flyers organization and stuff. It's always good to have a buddy in with you, and him, and I just, Kalynuk he was a late bloomer, but he had a hell of a season, and the guy is determined. He could go to a team and succeed. I think, when he was given the moment of being on that power play and given the C, he played well.
Yeah, totally. And I don't know. I think it's nice, but I wouldn't go into some spree of fighting for him and whatnot. And I think that's kind of what's out there for him as well, is that there isn't this big cash grab for a 7th round pick who's done really well. He's going to have to take that opportunity himself. I think he just needs to get himself into the pro game, take that 1 year, 2 year contract, get the best thing you can. If he has to move on, that's fine, but it's not going to be the definition of his future, right? He's still got to get into pros and compete with all of these guys who are just as good, if not better. So it's going to be an interesting thing, but I do think it's going to go to the deadline because it's a negotiation, and why wouldn't they, right? So let's get into our last topic here, and then we'll sign off after this. And, this time we'll reverse it. Jamie, we'll have you go first. We'll end it on Joe's. So best Flyers moments from the season. And do you think this team is better than the 09-010 season? We've talked about this a little bit. And I think overall this season for me, it was really the end. When we were winning those back-to-backs and we were just instilling our will on those teams. And I remember saying the Flyers are going to do it. I almost knew that it was going to happen. And every time they won those back-to-back, those home and homes, you're like, oh my God, this might actually be a cup team. That was the most exciting part of this year. Do I think they're better than the 09-010 season? I think they are deeper. I think they're a little earlier in their development cycle because, again, on the back end, we had Timonen and Pronger and Coburn who were fully in their development, where we have a younger group together. I do believe the talent level is definitely there, if not higher. I would say overall, yes, it is higher. But I don't know if they're better yet. I hope so. I hope so. They look like they are better at times. That team hit a very high and then had to rebound. This team just kept gradually getting better. And that's what I loved about this season. And that point really signified that, where they just kept getting better each game until obviously the inevitable loss and then the shutdown of the season. But Jamie, why don't you go and your best moments for the season?
That was great. But there's 2 points to the part of the season that made the season for me. One was Carter Hart's shutout, against the New Jersey Devils on a home opener. I think that sent a statement to the league right there that the Flyers were going to be legit, this season. I'm sorry, but when he made that Taylor Hall save during a 5-on-3 in a home opener, tons of pressure because it's Carter Hart's first full season at the helm at the young age of 21, playing against Wayne Simmons, who just came home, first game, back in Philly, tons of pressure. He knows the light is on, for Wayne and stuff. And Wayne's getting attention. Jersey's getting attention. The Flyers sat around all offseason hearing that the New York Rangers were going to be better than them, that the New Jersey Devils were going to be better than them. And, and here they are playing the New Jersey Devils in a home opener. Carter Hart gets his first career NHL shutout, makes that awesome save on Taylor Hall, during the 5-on-3. To me, that hands down was like, okay, this is a changing of the guard for the damn Metro division. And they went 15-4-4 against the Metro for the season. Unbelievable, right? Finally, they swept Columbus when Columbus is used to sweeping the Flyers, or beating the Flyers 3-1 in the season series or something of that nature, Another season for me was Ivan Provorov with that coast-to-coast game winner against the Montreal Canadiens. I'm sorry. That just showed right there. That dude was like Mark Howe up freaking ice. I was like, dude, I thought I saw Mark Howe out there. I was like, what the hell is going on? Was that Provy? Now, we were used because, and I say we, because you, Joe, you Reef, you scouted Provy before the 2015 NHL draft, right? You scouted him, didn't you? You scouted and watched him, right? You watched him, with the Brandon Wheat Kings and stuff like that, right? And he was offensive with the Brandon Wheat Kings. That was a la Brandon right there, what he did against the Montreal Canadiens. And when I interviewed him a few games after that, he was like, I asked him, what was the difference from this year to last season? Why are you guys having so much success? He flat out just said, winning. For 1 minute, that's all he said. I'm not even making this up. Winning. I was like, but he was honest. I thought I was dealing with Jake at that moment, because usually Provy is very quiet in the locker room. He doesn't approach people. He's not one of those to just go up and just start talking. People come to him because he commands that type of presence. Same thing with the players. They come and talk to Provy. You know what I mean? Because Provy is a beast. Niskanen flat out told me the game. They played the Pittsburgh Penguins right before the Christmas break, before the holiday break there, right? He said, I asked him, I said, how is it, playing with Provy? And Provy, he's in a world of his own. He said he's in a different class than I ever would have seen a player. That's how much. Now we're talking about a guy who's been in the league, 11 or 12 seasons, and he's talking about a guy, who's only been in the NHL. Was this his 4th season, right? And I'm sitting there. I was like, oh my God, this guy, he is legit. To me, this was Provorov's best season. This was the season that he cemented himself as the number 1 defenseman for the Philadelphia Flyers for years and years and years and years. And he made that dang $6.75 million contract look like gold. Because in the offseason, people were saying he shouldn't be signed to this. He shouldn't be signed to that. He's asking for $8 million. When you break it down, it was $8 million for 8 years, which would have been a steal to have that. You know what I mean? It's not about $8 million today. It's about $8 million for 8 years. 8 years, because after his 6-year contract's up, he's going to be getting like $15 million because he's that freaking good.
Wow. Yeah, and he deserves it, honestly.
Oh yeah, that's
I
what I'm
was
saying.
never concerned
I
about his
don't
contract.
listen. I'm just saying, But those were
Yeah, I hear. Those are pretty good, though, Jamie. Those are pretty damn good. Actually, that goal, that Provorov goal, is like watching Claude Giroux do it. Joe, same
For
question.
Yeah, for me, like Jamie said before, it's a little hard to follow up when everyone gives a bunch of great points. But one of mine is one of my first ones is another Carter Hart save. I can't remember who passed it across the ice to Radnan, but when he absolutely robbed the living heck out of Mikko Radnan, where he his glove somehow, when his body was like all the way down here, came all the way up to the post, and he robbed Radnan. That was just absolutely ridiculous and seemed like it shouldn't have been physically possible on live television. So that was one for me. And I'm always a sucker for first goals. So when when he dove and chipped it to Morgan for his first goal, and then Frost obviously cut to his net, had a perfect backhander over former Flyers goalie, of course, Sergei Bobrovsky, who, again, I always say this, we moved the wrong Russian, but that's not here nor there. Anyway, and then we have Nicholas Abe-Kubel. I had his first goal of the year, power play goal. He sniped it over King Lundqvist, who's not exactly the king anymore, but he's still a solid goalie when he's on his game. And he sniped it over him that game for his first power play goal, his first career goal. And that was a perfect shot. That was missile for the top corner of the net. So those are my three. And the reason I stop with him is I think this team, because of the fact that we have Carter Hart in net, before we had Boosh in the twilight of his career, Michael Layton was a career minor leaguer that came out of nowhere and stepped up for us, which was awesome to see.
And Ray Emery. Also Ray Emery.
And Ray, who beat the living crap out of one of our other former goalies, Braden Holtby, or Michael Neuwirth, I mean. So we have better goaltending this year with Elliott combined to Hart. I like that. I also like our bottom six because we have Abe-Kubel stepped up. He's a little bit quicker than some of the guys we had back in 2010. You had guys playing with messed up foots back in 2010. You got people coming in this year that nobody's injured. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's going to be at full speed. And the Flyers have some pretty quick skaters. Hazy, honestly, seems like he's moving around the quickest he's ever moved in his career this year playing on our team. And then as Jamie already mentioned about TK earlier, he's definitely continued to show improvements each year with speed. And then Scott Lawton is another guy that worked on speed a lot when he went down. I believe it was in 2017 when he went down for the whole year. And then, so he's a guy, I just love our bottom six combined with our, like you said, top-notch talent in the top six. That's a little bit better than that team. So I think putting those two together with the goaltending, that will put them a notch ahead. But the defense is a question because we had great defense in the regular season, but young guns in the postseason is always going to be a question more. So
that's why Braun is so important, right? That's why Braun and Niskanen, that's why they paid extra to bring those guys over here.
And Ghost.
And Ghost as well.
Don't forget about Ghost. I'm telling you right now that he could very well win a job, out of, going into the playoffs because this is a fresh sheet here.
I'll be honest with you. That's my expectation of Ghost. I know most people have given up on him. I have not. I don't think talent disappears. So I still think he's a special player. I don't know if he'll be here forever, but I don't see why. In my mind, Robert Haig is sitting when I start the playoffs. I like Haig. He's not going anywhere in my mind, but I'm putting Ghost in there, especially because he is what our team needs more of, in my opinion. Not to knock on Haig, but there's just such a high ceiling with Ghost. We are heavily incentivized to get him back into prime form for whatever reason.
In the playoffs, what wins games? Special teams, right? So just for special teams alone, Ghost may get the call over Haig. Haig could be even better than Ghost, but Ghost may get the call because AV and Fletcher know, okay, I'm putting Ghost out. He can play on PP1 or PP2. It doesn't matter, but at least he provides, a shot from the point, to, stir up and maybe get a dirty goal. Here or there, or rebound goal, or JVR maybe deflects one, or something that
he has more playoff experience than every other young defenseman. I mean, he was the defenseman in the playoffs for us. Back in the day, we didn't have much. It was him and Delzato, and he was by far the best defenseman we had. Yeah. So we got to give him some credit for what he's done in the past, right? Even Provorov doesn't have much playoff experience, so not that he's going to need it personally, but the other guys probably will. Provorov is probably the only one immune to that, I would say, to some degree.
But I will say this, that JVR is a player to watch, for the playoff time, because JVR he's a natural goal scorer. It seemed that he became a good playmaker from December on. He really came into his own, with his behind the back passes. He was making crisp passes that people haven't seen in JVR's game, for years. And I just think he exuded confidence from AV from about December, the end of December on, is when JVR, I believe, started to look like he found,
Sure.
So he's one to watch out for too.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Underrated performer. No, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, I thought another guy, if he gets in, because our bottom six, we have a crowded space a little bit, especially if Patrick comes back. We have everyone healthy. If Pitlick continues to play, which I think he will. He's played well when we've given him some power play time this year. He just got his first playoff experience. I believe it was last year, and the Stars only played about 6 games in the postseason before they got eliminated. So that was his first cup of coffee. He didn't play amazing then, but that was his first time. He's having his best statistical season in terms of consistency this year, not numbers-wise, but consistency-wise. And that's something I think, if you're talking about dark horse guys, names that people don't usually mention going into the postseason are usually guys that tend to step up for you. Like, no one's thought Zach Sanford would be a great person in the playoffs. So there's different guys that do that. That's something I look for, where we never thought that we would have to put Michael Layden back in the playoffs, talking about 2010. So there's always guys that tend to step up for you when you need them to. So.
Oh, yeah.
But absolutely. And I agree. Pitlick is that guy, right? We have a few of those guys in the bottom 6 that could do that. Scott Lawton being another.
Yeah. I just like Joel Farabee, too, the way he talked yesterday during his audio with Zach Hill. Just, you could tell it's a guy that, a young man anyway, you would never tell that he is, what he is, just a young man, in my opinion. I mean, he sounded like he was a 30-year-old veteran. He sounded like he was 30 years old. So, there you go.
Yeah, no, he's a guy. I think I didn't say him just because I expect a hell of a lot from him. I love him. Yeah, I love Farabee. I don't expect him to struggle. I expect him to actually play pretty well in the bottom 6 in the playoffs because of how his work ethic is well. So that might be why I didn't say him, where Pitlick just has naturally been a bottom 6 his whole career. No one talks about him as much, except for here because we're Philadelphia and we talk about everybody. But in other cities, no one talks about their bottom 6 guys necessarily as much, unless if you're talking about Boston. And so.
Yeah, I hear that. So, with a little bit of love here at the end, love for our team. Guys, I think we had a good long episode, especially that we're keeping the conversation going throughout the season, regardless if you guys stop talking about hockey. We refuse to. We'll keep talking about hockey all through the summer. We'll keep talking about the Flyers, regardless of when the season starts. But we are all excited for the playoffs. Jamie, thank you, my brother, for joining me again. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for writing for our team and being part of our team. You have been an immense, awesome addition, and it has been awesome, and we truly appreciate you coming on the podcast. As we head out here, please tell everybody where to find you, where they can follow you. Talk to our audience and say goodbye.
Well, I really appreciate you guys allowing me to come on whenever you want me to come on. I'm always happy to. I love talking hockey. I love talking sports in general. And like I said earlier, you can find me at JJBorek26 on Twitter. Yarif just put up a heart thing that made me laugh in the middle. And then at ANY Phillies, because we didn't change it yet. So that's the one for our other podcast. And True_Philly Sport is for the True Philadelphian Sportscast. And then, of course, I love writing for you guys. I love writing for the Flyers. I can't wait to start covering everything when we come back. And then another thing is Pub Sports Radio, my friend and I write for, so we also write for that, which is, I did an article on the hub cities, if anyone wants to check that out, on that site before this, so I had as much information as possible in my brain coming into this podcast. But that's all I really have. I just wish everyone to stay positive, stay well in these times. It seems like things are ticking in the right direction, other than if you're talking about baseball. So I think that we should just stay positive, stay well, and embrace the fact that hopefully the NBA is coming back in Orlando and the best playoffs in the world are coming back in, looks like Vegas, and then hopefully some Canadian city now that Trudeau okayed it, it seems. So.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what, Joe? In the words of Joe, follow every Flyers podcast, because Joe is a part of every Flyers podcast, because he honestly, the dude is a legend. He's a phenomenal writer. Please check him out. We couldn't be happier to have him. I don't know why he wasn't picked up by another site, but we're happy as hell we have you. And I mean,
Yeah, thank God.
so check out his work. Check out his latest article on Ghost. Tell him what you think. His realistic trade, article on Ghost got about close to 6,000 views. Good for you. Kudos to you, my man.
Thank you.
You're just kicking some butt.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks again, guys. We'll be back next week for another episode. Again, a little delay on this one. Every now and then we have a delay, but don't worry. We're going to still be consistent coming every week. We'll bring more guests, more of our writers. We're trying to get one of our writers, Lance Green, on one of the other ones. Hopefully we'll figure that schedule out. Franny Drummond, who is an artist who makes most of the helmets, trying to get him on the podcast. Several other interesting people. Some people from USA Hockey, but we're going to be working on more stuff coming in the future. Keep following, keep coming back, and thank you always, and continue being gritty.